Welcome to video 12 on Traincontroller 10 Gold. In this episode we'll have a second look at schedule rules because there are just so many of them. Select the route with the least turnouts. Yeah, sometimes between two blocks there can be multiple routes in a busy area with a lot of turnouts, and the train could take a little deviation. But if you put this tick mark here, then it will always select the route with the least number of turnouts, which usually is the route which is as much straightforward as you can get. We can tell a train controller to always select the oldest block or route, the one that has not been used previously, and that is especially interesting if you have a cleaning train. Then it will also use the blocks and the routes that have not been used the previous time it came by. So for cleaning purposes you could set this tick mark, and if you have a schedule with two station blocks like over here, then that particular train will always go first on this block, and then the next time around it will go to the other block. And the next time around it will go to this block. So it takes away a little bit of randomness, but can be very useful for cleaning trains. We can tell Traincontroller to ignore distances. What does that mean? If you have an auto train schedule, so you want the train to go from block A to block B, there could be on a large layout multiple different paths from A to B. And if you ignore the distances, it can take a very long path with driving 16 times around somewhere before it reaches block B. So usually I never set this tick mark. I don't know why I would set it. Just take the shortest possible route and it is okay. But if you prefer to set it, then you may also want to consider to have a maximum detour number. That is the maximum number of blocks that Traincontroller takes into account to find a path from A to B. Let's go to the look ahead section, and the first entry there is a reserve destination block at start. I changed the schedule from the schedule Bletchley to Wellingborough. Suppose I want to drive from Bletchley to Wellingborough, but all three tracks here are already occupied. Then, the train could start to drive. It drives over here, it drives over here, and then it is here in block North 3. And then it finds out that it cannot reach Wellingborough because all blocks are already occupied. And then it is stopping there. But then none of these three trains will be able to leave the station anymore. So we have a classical deadlock. We can avoid this deadlock by setting this tick mark. Because then the train from Bletchley will only leave Bletchley if it already knows that it can reserve a block over there, which it already reserves when it leaves. So that can avoid deadlocks. We can make this deadlock prevention stronger even by saying that we want to reserve the complete path. If I set that tick mark, then all the blocks on the way will be reserved, and we know for certain that the train can drive on and will always reach its destination. The third rule is use the start block as a destination block. That can be useful in this situation where we have two start and end blocks. We have a blue train, and we can say that we want this blue train to always use track 1. So then I place this tick mark, it leaves the station, it drives around, and then it comes back, and then it wants to go to track 1. And the same for the other train. We can say that it has to go back to the block where it came from. You can set that tick and have this behavior if you like. Final look ahead rule is go to the start block of a successor schedule. Schedules can have successors, and then if you have a schedule which has multiple end blocks, you can force the train to drive to a start block of the next schedule. And then of course we have taken care of that it will always start this successor. because it is in the correct block. This is only helpful if you have large stations with schedules with multiple end blocks. Let's have a look at release of blocks and routes. This is interesting because it can slow the traffic or speed up the traffic depending on what you like. The time of release of block and routes. What does that mean? Well, suppose we have a train that is, or we have a station Bedford. 2 tracks are occupied and there's a 3rd train waiting already to enter the station here at West 1. Now a train starts to drive from Bedford to the next block. If we have it on stop marker as it is right now, that means that this block over here where the train left will only be released when the train has reached the stop marker in the next block, and that is at the end of a block. So suppose this is a quite long block, 2 or 3 meters maybe even, then it takes a very long time before this block is released and the train that is waiting here can finally enter the station. That leads to less throughput of the trains, less driving. More trains will be standing still. There is another solution here. There are even 5, but let's have only a look at smart upon entry. What does that mean? That's the one that I personally always use. That means the train leaves here station Bedford, it drives to the next block, and as soon as it reaches the sensor, the entry sensor of this block, then it already releases this block and the next train can enter that station. And now this route is still occupied or reserved, and that route is only released when the tail of the train is past that sensor. How does it know that the tail of the train has passed the sensor? Well, for that we need to add the length of the train. So in edit mode, in the general tab, you can have a length of the train as given here, 100 centimeters for this train. If you have put this on 0, then the train has no length and specified, and then it will always release that route at the stop marker. But if you have given it a length, then it can calculate, Traincontroller knows the train speed and so forth, so it can calculate when the tail of the train passed the sensor, and then it will release this route. So this smart upon, where are my rules? This smart upon entry, that is what I personally always use because it increases the throughput of the trains, and I like to see my trains driving more than standing still. If you use this smart upon complete entry, then you can also specify a number of centimeters additional to just make sure that things go always okay. Usually you can leave it at a very low number, but if you want to build in a bit more security, you can increase this number of centimeters that it adds to the length of the train to make sure that no turnouts are being switched when the tail is still on it. These next 3 rules, they by default are switched off, and well, they are for some special situations. You can click always the help file and read there what it all means, and that this video will become much too long if we are going through all of these, which are seldom used. Then we have a whole section on train length, and well, you can have a situation where you have trains that are longer than some of the blocks on your layout, and this section specifies what should happen in those cases. There are quite a lot of cases. I would suggest to have a look at the help file. Wait, I already had opened that. There is a whole section on train length. And what these different rules mean and can do for you. You can prevent trains to stop in a block that is too short because it will be with its tail in the previous block still, or on some of the turnouts that need to be switched by other trains. This whole section is meant to deal with blocks that are shorter than your trains. Ideally, of course, you design your model railway layout in such a way that all the blocks are long enough to hold all the trains. But sometimes, you can simply not manage that. And then this can be a very helpful set of rules. By the way, of course, in this case also you will have to set your train length for all the trains, otherwise these rules will mean nothing. So that is a precondition for this. Let's skip the train sets for now and also skip the signals for now. Let's go to the security section. What we have in the security section is a watchdog. This can be helpful for large layouts where you may not have complete oversight, or if you have sections that are hidden under the table. You can set a watchdog time, say 90 seconds. And what that does is, if a train did not reach the next block within 90 seconds, then an alarm will pop up on your screen warning you that there must be something wrong. A train is stuck or doesn't drive anymore or whatever happened. Traincontroller expected a train and it never arrived. Can be very helpful with hidden sections of your track. Limited aberration protection is a similar thing. If a train drives into a block where it was not expected, then probably something was wrong with a turnout. A turnout did not switch while it should have. A Traincontroller can detect this situation. A train has arrived in a totally different block where expected, and then you get a warning. So this is quite useful to put on. If all your cars have a current draw, or you have put a little resistor in them, then all the cars can be detected in the case that you use current detection as sensors, and then you can put this value on so that if a car is lost, then a Traincontroller will detect that situation. I use reed switches as detectors, so for me this is a useless rule. Let's skip the facilities for now. Let's go to the miscellaneous section. Critical sections. I personally always leave those off. It means that a train may drive into a critical section if there was already another train, and the same holds for the trains in the same direction. That is a choice that you can make, that if you have a very long critical section, another train may already enter that section even if the previous train has not already left it. It can increase the throughput. I don't have very long sections, so I always keep those off. Adaptive braking, that is something that is a bit long to explain. The best explanation is to switch it off, because if you do that, then you see that the anticipate stop is available, and that is a much nicer one. That anticipate stop means that you can enter a speed, let's enter 40 kilometers per hour, a speed that the trains will slow down to if they already see that the next block has a red signal. So this can make that your train does not drive through a block with full speed and then brakes at the end. It already reduces its speed, and maybe that red signal ahead becomes green in the meantime, and then it can accelerate again without having come to a full stop. It is very nice to use, and also nice to see these speed changes happening. Talking about speed, that might be a very nice subject for the next video, to have a look what we can do with speeds in stations, and then already break down a little bit, decelerate a little bit in the previous block, and how to do those things. And we can also use speed markers. So let's have a video about speeds.